Hi, my name is Peter Ackerley. I am the former CES for ProGEN. I'm going to apologize right now for the noise that's out there in the alleyway outside my school, and then there's some kids out here in our classroom that are kind of playing right now, so they might be a little bit aside too. Anyway, this is a message for people who are actually any level of experience when it comes to working in Japanese schools. Some of what I say might make a little bit more sense if you have a stronger background, but I'm going to try to make this series something that's useful to everybody. Here, I'm just giving you a background. Yeah, so why am I doing this? Like I said, I used to be the CES, and now I withdrew from that role in order to start my own school and a franchise that I'm licensed to run here um, is not a juku, but it's a school whose curriculum tracks the EIKEN. It's a school designed to prepare kids for international schools. Um, but in reality, it's a school that parents send their kids to if they want a four skills approach that's still English only. Um, and right, so at the higher levels, we do use a lot of EIKEN materials. And I want to start by laying out some principles that I think you need to bear in mind when it comes to addressing the challenge of bringing some EIKEN related teaching proficiency into your relationship with whatever Japanese school you're working in. Okay, first things first. Like I said, I'm not a juku. And you shouldn't try to be a juku either. What's happening with EIKEN right now, and this affects my own business, is that I'm really sorry about that noise. What's happening with EIKEN now is that it's becoming valuable. More and more schools are accepting it as evidence of a student's academic aptitude, or at the very least, a student's English aptitude. It's a strategy that kids can use to become stronger candidates for better junior high schools and high schools. Um, and so, what happens when that happens is people get good at taking the test, and there's often a gap that you'll find. Not always, but often a gap that you'll see between a person's EIKEN score and the proficiency that is supposed to represent and what their actual proficiency is. I have one girl who is in my grade 4 class, in other words, the class that's designed to help people pass EIKEN 4. She could easily pass EIKEN 4, but she's barely able to put sentences together, and really struggles to follow directions in English, even really simple ones. And she's an excellent kid in terms of her discipline level and her maturity. So just be aware that there's already an operation up and running. There are already people who are very good at teaching in a juku sort of manner EIKEN test-taking skills. And if your school is really serious about EIKEN, you probably have colleagues who are already good at that. So don't try to compete with that. Or not, I don't want to say compete with that. Don't try to redo what they're already doing well. What you want to do is you want to bring sound. That is a terrible pen. You want to bring sound into the equation. That's what you bring to the table, all right? And my experience with the kids that I've worked with so far is that if they get to a certain level, before they see me, they often are zing, 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 really translating lots of things into Japanese in their mind. And that works well enough for EIKEN 4, EIKEN 5, EIKEN 4, even a little bit of EIKEN 3. But then there's a wall that they hit because the test, really generally speaking, does not reward your ability to translate things into Japanese. It rewards your ability to, at the higher level, really does reward your ability to think in English and process things in English. You might see directions in Japanese, but the test is designed in such a way to really punish people who have gotten really good at flipping back and forth between English and Japanese. Sound. You bring sound to the equation. Here's what you want to do. Sorry about that. You want your kids to look at an EIKEN problem, if as pertains to EIKEN. You want your kids to look at an EIKEN problem, and you want them to hear what they see on the page. Why is that? It's because if they can hear what they see on the page and kind of hear the rhythm of an English sentence as it appears on the page, embedded in that rhythm and melody of an English sentence is the underlying logic of the grammar. Let me just give you an example. Okay. If I had known you were sick, I would have visited you. Especially when you work with adults, you'll show them a sentence like that. They'll look at it and they'll be like, "Yeah, I got it." They know what it means, or they think they know what it means. But they've seen that grammatical pattern many a times. It's a subjunctive. It's a past. It's a past subjunctive conditional. It's a past counterfactual conditional. If I had known you were sick, I would have visited you. Okay, there's lots of grammar embedded in there. And here's the thing. As you may know, the human brain can only hold 7 objects at a time, right? 7 plus or minus 2, right? Human brain can only hold 7 plus or minus 2 objects at a time. So even if you've got a genius kid, they're looking at this sentence, if they're going, if I had known you were sick, I would up. That's 9 slots taken up. Well, how can they keep a sentence like this inside their head long enough to analyze it if they can only hold 9 pieces of it, right? How can they do that? They chunk. They don't hear if I had known. If I'd known. If I'd known you were sick, I'd have visited you. There we go. 1, 2, 3. If I'd known you were sick, I'd have visited you. How do you chunk those things together? You can only chunk those things together if you hear them as a musical motif. If I'd known you were sick, I would have visited you. I would have visited you. Right? You need to teach the kids to hear what they're seeing on the page. Because here's what's happening if you don't do that. They are learning to translate each of these lexical items into Japanese. They're translating each of those lexical items into Japanese. Then what they're doing is they are hoping that each of these lexical items transformed into Japanese, put together into this long string of lexical items, is going to jostle itself into a Japanese sentence that makes intuitive sense to them, and then they will assume that that Japanese sentence that they've jostled into place is going to correctly match the meaning of this sentence. And at this level, it never does, right? Now, what do you bring to the table as a foreigner? You bring to the table the deep-seated confidence that you know what the music of this sentence is, right? So, Don't try to teach them. Don't try to teach them to decode sentences in the way that their Japanese teachers already help them to do. What the Japanese teacher's doing is great, but it works only up to a certain point. It's a tool that people can use. It's handy. I often flip into Japanese in my lessons just to make sure that kids are understanding the big picture. But I really try to keep it in English, and one major strategy for keeping it in English is getting the kids to focus on hearing the melody of each of these parts of the sentence. If I'd known, get them to say, if I'd known you were sick, I would have visited you. Get them to feel that. And then once those linguistic motifs, those audio linguistic motifs are in their bodies where they can feel them, then when they encounter other similar structures like this, they at least know, that's this animal. They don't say past counterfactual conditional. They probably say something like kateho kako kandio, which I hate. I wish they'd call it the kateho wakashi. But anyway, they'd see this animal. They'd go, yeah, that's a past subjunctive conditional. Yeah, that's what that is. I mean, they don't have to say those words, but they can feel that in their body because they know the music of it. And then all they have to do is pull out the key lexical items. What are the key lexical items here? Known, sick, visited, right? These are the key lexical items that they have to hold on. So then there are 4 slots. No, there are 7 slots. There's the melody of each of those 3 parts of the sentence. If I'd known you were sick, I would have visited you. 1, 2, 3. And then we've got know, sick, visit. That's 6 slots. And that makes it much easier for them to comprehend what they're seeing. So there it is. I should do one more item that's really important. This is really important, okay? You will not succeed if you do not come at this with this attitude. I promise you. Augment your Japanese colleagues. If you want to think of this as a competition, fine. But seriously, we're talking about Fred Astaire competing with John Wayne. They're 2 different skill sets. The best way to come at this is try to figure out what your Japanese colleagues are already doing that relates to EIKEN, and in other videos we will talk about this. And then bring your value added. You know the melody, they don't know it. This comes up again and again and again. It comes up a lot with phonics. Japanese English teachers would love it if one of us would go in there and fix the phenomenal challenge they have when it comes to teaching phonics. That's just one example. Here we have inflections and intonation and some phonemic pronunciation issues. All of this is stuff that you are perfectly positioned to deliver value on. You're a team player. Think of yourself as augmenting, not competing. It will make you profoundly popular, and it will make your kids happy. Hope that was helpful. See you later.